Wow. Christmas. The Bible is a book about one story. Many authors, 44 authors, 66 books, telling one story, and it's really the story of God's love and concern for mankind. It's really the story of a God who intervenes, a God who acts on behalf of man. I mean, the story, it's just like Groundhog's Day. People, kind of get their act together, then they blow it, and they get their act together, then they blow it. God's always intervening, always bailing them out. And I don't know about you, but I relate to the stories in the Bible a lot. I love the fact that Peter's in the Bible. I love the fact that the Bible doesn't sanitize people's lives and just tells us like it is. I love when we read the genealogies and we see thieves and we see prostitutes in the genealogy of Christ. We see prostitutes. We see people that murdered, adultery. All within that line of birth and succession, coming with Jesus. And when Jesus came, over the centuries, we've sanitized the story, a lot. And all the paintings we see and all the beautiful art that we see isn't very representative of what actually happened. This thing that happened with Mary was very, very scandalous, and there was no reasonable, plausible, appropriate explanation for what took place. She's 14 years old, maybe younger, and all of a sudden she's pregnant. And they didn't have relations, but she's pregnant. And it's God. And how do you explain that? And if you had a son or a daughter and they said, "Hey, Mom, Dad, my girlfriend's pregnant, but we didn't have relations. Just God." You'd be, "All right, let me call the psych ward." And then we have, Joseph and really a very kind man and wanted to cover for her. But the Lord intervened with him and said, "Joseph, don't do that. This is me." And so he just took the brunt of it. And when they went to find a place for her to give birth, I don't think it was that it wasn't so much that there wasn't, this is my speculation, it wasn't so much that there wasn't room at the inn. There wasn't room for them at the inn. Because they had a very sullied and suspect reputation. And so when Jesus was born, he wasn't born into protective, pristine, sanitized environment. He was born in a stable, and the stable's not a beautiful, fragrance-free environment. In fact, they speculate that area was like a cave where they kept the animals, and it probably didn't have much ventilation, and they didn't have running water, and more than likely Jesus was laid in a trough that animals fed out of. So here, God becomes flesh and dwells among us, and he begins in the most inauspicious way. Not protected, not glorified, except for by the angels in heaven and a few shepherds who would have had, really, they would have been the low rung in society. They wouldn't have been the people that were respected and admired. They would have been people that were actually scoffed at and mocked. And yet they're the ones that come to worship him. And the angels in heaven worship him. And the rest of the world doesn't have a clue what's going on. And yet, in that moment, the most stunning, most spectacular, most powerful, most dynamic, most historic thing took place. The Son of God leaves heaven of his own accord, of his own will, to do the bidding of the Father. He makes the ultimate intervention, which changes the course of history and changes the trajectory of hundreds of millions of lives. He comes to seek and to save the lost. He doesn't come to condemn the world. He doesn't come to bring judgment. The scripture says he didn't John 3:17, Jesus didn't come to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. It says, so God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that those who just simply believe in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. We'll have life forever. It's nothing that we do other than believe. If we believe, then we can receive. You know, one of my favorite Bible characters that we know virtually nothing about in terms of his history, except for it probably wasn't a good one, was the thief on the cross. I mean, I think that encapsulates the grace of God as much as any other moment in all of history. It encapsulates what happens to you and I. The thief looks at Jesus, who's being mocked, and he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That's all he does. He is in agony. He's been beaten. Nails have been driven in his hands, spikes in his feet. And he's there, and he turns to Jesus in his last moments and says, remember me. And Jesus said, from this day forward, will you be with me in paradise? He never learned to tithe. He never learned to, serve in one of the ministries of the church. He never did a thing except looked to Jesus. And Jesus said, I'm enough. And it's one of the lessons that we could greatly benefit from, so that we'll stop striving to prove to God that we belong. I'll do this for you, Lord. I'll do that for you, Lord. I'll serve in this way. I'll give this much. Nothing we can do adds anything to what Jesus already has done. So relax. Rest in the provision of God. In the provision of God. In John chapter 3, it says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And later in the chapter it says, but to as many as receive him, just receive him, receive the truth, to them gives the power to become children of God. Later in John, it talks about the light coming into the world, and the world not receiving the light, and the world actually hating the light. But the scripture says that the light was the light. Years ago, a friend of mine had a vision. He was driving, I think he was on the 91 freeway here, and he was driving, and all of a sudden he just saw like a honeycomb. And out from the honeycomb was dripping the honey. And it was coming down to earth, and it was falling on people everywhere. And there were two reactions to the honey. One is there were people going, ooh, oh, what is this? And they hated it. And others were just going, taste it. Oh, how sweet, how wonderful. That's always the reaction. That's always the reaction. We either love the things of God or we hate it. And when Jesus came and he shone his light across the earth, there were those who hated it and rejected it. And in the end, crucified him, killed him, and nailed him to the cross. But they were just uninformed, because they were just pawns in God's hand, doing the work that needed to be done for my sake and for your sake, so that we can live free from condemnation, free from guilt, free from shame, free from the pain that we experience in this life. Jesus experienced pain so he could bear my pain. Have you ever experienced pain in this life? Of course you have. But if you turn to Jesus and give it to him, he'll bear that pain for you, because he already suffered for you and I. So that we don't have to be controlled by the circumstances in this world. I met this week with a young girl. She's now almost 20. And about a little less than 2 years ago, she was 18 at the time, she woke up. Well, she went to bed with a really bad headache. She had been working out at the gym. As a young 18-year-old girl, liked to go out dancing and, having fun, whatever. And but she went to the gym after work, and she came home and she went to bed. She had a headache. And she told her mom that she had headaches, so her mom did her some, Advil or whatever. And in the morning, she can't get out of bed. She's in so much agony and so much pain, and her limbs are not functioning right. This is in February. I think it was February 17th. Within the next few days, within the next few weeks, 3 weeks, they had amputated both her legs and both her arms. 18-year-old, precious young girl. And when I went to see her, she was just one bandage. One big bandage. Every single time they changed her bandages, they had to go to the operating room because it was considered a major operation. She could die at any one of those times. She was on so many drugs. They tried to keep her from suffering too much pain. And they did 25 skin grafts to try to cover, where they'd taken flesh from her. And when I went there, and I would go and I would sing over her, and I would pray with the family, and I'll be honest with you, as a human being, as just a person, I was so scared. I mean, here's this baby suffering in pain and in agony. Her mom and her dad, just watching their child. And I'm afraid to enter the room. But I did. And I would sing over her and pray with them. And I didn't even know she knew I was there. But she did. And I just got a note last week that her dad wrote me, and she said, he said, and there have been lots of people that visited her. And he said, there are a lot of people that came and went. And the only person that she never wanted to leave was you. And I'm clueless. I have no idea. No idea. And so as soon as I got that, I called him and I said, I want to come see Kate. And so I went and I sat on her bed and she's, now she's, her hair is growing back. She's smiling big. She's got scars. Her arms and legs are gone. And she's sitting there and she is glowing. She is light in the room. And she's smiling. And she's talking, and we're just talking, and I said, Caitlin, what's up? How can you be this way? How can you have such joy? And she goes, because the Lord's with me. She literally said that she is grateful that this has happened to her. She said, all I could pray when I was in the hospital is that I wouldn't die. Because I knew that if I died, I wouldn't be with Jesus for eternity. And so in that moment, Jesus met me. And Jesus took her pain. She could complain all she wants, and I would never rebuke her. She could whine, she could say, I'm not like, I was going to be this, I was going to be that. And it doesn't matter to her. Now she just wants to be a testimony to the goodness and the grace and the mercy of God. Because Jesus is her light. Because the honey dripped down from heaven and she found it to be sweet. So Jesus enters and he's the light. And some people cringe and they hide and they scurry and they run from the light. But other people run to the light. And that's about all that we have to do with it. We just receive it. We just believe it. And our lives are transformed. And there isn't a thing on earth that can affect us, that can harm us, that can rob us of our eternal reward of basking in the presence of God for all eternity. That's what God did. That's what happened to that little vulnerable baby. You see these littlest kids that came up here, and they just can't do anything wrong. It doesn't matter what they do. It's a hit, you know. Gosh, I had 6 kids, and my kids would get up there. My one daughter, I won't mention her name, the very first thing she would do is grab her dress and lift it over her head. Of course, I was always in the front row, being mocked mercilessly by a whole company of dons. But listen, this is the Christmas story. The Christmas story is that God, in His grace, in His kindness, in His compassion, in His mercy, in His great, great love, did for us what we could never, ever do for ourselves. And there's nothing you have to do to prove anything to Him. All you have to do is say yes to Him. Turn to Him, not away from Him. If you've never done that, if you just go to church, or you go to Bible studies, but you don't know Him, I want you to make a decision today. I want you to say yes to Him. Say yes to Him, no matter what it might be. Guess what? You may not. It's not like the lottery, in the sense that you say yes to Jesus, and all of a sudden your marriage is going to be perfect. You say yes to Jesus, and all of a sudden your bank account's going to be full, endlessly. You say yes to Jesus, and everything's going to be. It's not an external thing, it's an internal thing. And when that internal thing happens, the external things can no longer control us. We can be buffeted, we can be, bruised, we can be, tossed to and fro, but none of that matters. We can go to sleep in the hull of the boat. Remember Jesus in the boat? He's out there with fishermen, people who know about the ocean and who know the dangers of the ocean, and they're going, the waves are coming and they're going to drown and they're going to sink, and he's asleep. And they're like, wake, Jesus, wake up, we're going to drown. What he did, he rebuked him. He rebuked him. He said, where's your faith? And they're like, well, where's your bucket? Because we're going down. And but that whole narrative, that whole story begins with this. Jesus said to the disciples, let's go to the other side. That's simple. The same one who said, let there be light, and there was light, said, let's go to the other side. So he just went to sleep. The same one who said that says to you, take it to the other side. Take it to a life that you would never know without me. A life where my light shines on you brilliantly and spectacularly, and yet you will not be ashamed because you're clothed in my righteousness. Clothed in my righteousness. That's what he did for us. And that's why he came. And there will be a day when he will come again and we'll go to be with him for all eternity. And at that time, I just think we'll be stunned. We'll be stunned because we'll understand for the very first time the scope of what that birth of that little child meant. It changed the world. It changed the world. And he continues to change lives. And I'll conclude with this because I think about the church right now. Coming up, we'll see all these New Year's Eve things going on all over the world in all kinds of countries. And we'll see that and be beautiful and be moving. But at the very same time that's happening, this church that's gathering and celebrating and all that is under vicious and vile attack. And it has been since its outset. There's been people, because we do have an enemy, and he is real, and he's malevolent, and he's violent, and he's vile, and he continues to move and act against the church. We read daily of men and women who are martyred for their faith. And yet the church continues to grow and expand. And lives continue to be transformed and changed because that baby was born. And in his birth, in his life, and his death, the church was birthed. It was birthed by his blood, by his giving himself as a sacrifice, so that we don't have to be. Let's pray.